Hey, security peeps. We are live with another edition of Breaking into Cybersecurity, and it is a special edition tonight. I am Renee Small, Cybersecurity Super Recruiter, helping awesome leaders hire great talent. And I am here with the phenomenal Alex Harrington. He is the executive director, founder. What other title do you have, Alex? Everything.
I have no saying. I am the top of the bottom or the bottom of the top. So Alex here, Alex is fine.
Yes, Alex is head of Federal Career Connection, which is an amazing organization that I'm actually on the board of now. Woohoo! Helping folks get into either federal opportunities and or get promotions within the federal government. So Alex's organization has been doing such phenomenal work over the past number of years. And for about a year or so, a little over a year, we have been doing these one-on-one sessions once a month, bringing in various people from FCC to come in and talk about technology. I want to make sure I'm not hearing feedback. Are you hearing anything, Alex?
I'm not hearing any feedback from
Okay.
you.
Okay.
How about my end? Is it clear on your
end? You sound crystal clear on your end.
Great.
All right, awesome. So I know people are going to chime in with questions later, but Alex, you were telling me an awesome story about a cybersecurity leader that you met from the Coast Guard that gave you some awesome tips on and pet peeves on what people should do and not do when they're trying to break into the industry. So I'm super excited to hear about it. And I look forward to our conversation tonight.
That is awesome. No, it's great. And I have to admit, it is, one of the things I think everyone in your community, in your audience, everyone should know is that when you're meeting people out there, when you're networking, either intentionally or unintentionally, when you come across an individual and you just spark a good conversation, the one thing I try to do is learn about them. It's one of those awesome habits when you meet people. You're in the listening mode, especially when you first meet them. It's not all about you, it's really about them. So when I met this individual at of all places, a farewell of my wife, with my wife's work, her boss is actually leaving, so they did a farewell for him. And of all the individuals, I tend to kind of mingle. I'm one of those individuals who try to start, I go to different individuals to try to start a conversation and try to find something to kind of spark that conversation. And obviously, I think the one thing to keep in mind when you're trying to spark a conversation that will hopefully kind of maybe allow you to learn about that individual, and hopefully maybe down the road end up being a possible contact in your networking circles. You find something that you can kind of use it as a match to like that, to spark that conversation. For me, what I find easy with people who have tattoos, I love asking, my first question all the time is, or I actually make a statement. I said, "That's really amazing ink on your arm. Tell me about the meaning behind it." And I just listen. And so that's what I did with this individual.
Great question.
He had some ink on his arm, and I said, "Hey, what's the meaning behind it?" And then we got rolling into he's a master of knowledge when it comes to some of his hobbies, and of course, he mentioned about I got to that point, so I've asked him, what do you do for work, and he mentioned that he serves in the Coast Guard, and that he leads a cybersecurity team. So I started then picking his brain. And so I'm hoping to share maybe some in a paraphrasing way. I hope to share some of his insights when it comes to looking for candidates who are trying to break into cybersecurity. So hopefully we can kind of mine out some of those nuggets I had in that conversation with this individual this past weekend.
Alex, that sounds fantastic. But before you jump into him, I think just given that little nugget of how to network specifically because we have so many cybersecurity professionals that tend to be introverts, that tend to, be uncomfortable when it comes to networking and not know what to say, how to spark a conversation. What are some other things, before we jump into what he was providing, what are some other tips that you may have for them, since you're such a great mover and shaker, to tell folks about how to, kind of break the ice when they are at networking events or parties or anything where you can learn more about what people are doing?
That's a very good observation from your end, and it's a very good topic to talk about before we get into the nuggets of that conversation with this individual from the Coast Guard. When it comes to networking, especially for individuals who are maybe not so social or not or not classified as an extrovert in the Myers-Briggs scale or any other type of personality or vocational test. For those who are more kind of introverted or more kind of the kind of very comfortable, really staying in their corner, my first advice is to buck up and get out there. Buck up and get out there, to get in, to fit in. And that's actually good. Let's use that as the first point. Get in where you can fit in. And so for you, when it comes to networking, if you are uncomfortable, you have to actually embrace it and get out there, to get in, to get in there, to fit in these circles of yours. And these networking circles can be, and think of it as a to help you get in, to fit in. Maybe be intentional what type of circles that you're trying to maybe break into or trying to expand, and be intentional about it. And the best way, and I've done it myself, is I've created a kind of a taxonomy, and I can even follow up with this conversation with some information on potential networking circles to help you be more intentional, be more methodical in the approach of when you're approaching these networking circles. And for example, it could be one networking circle can be your professional association, that organization that you are a member with, that represents your respective industry. Also, when it comes to professional networks, such as if you're part of like a chamber of commerce, or some places the Lions Club, or it comes to Toastmasters. Those type of professional circles that you can potentially expand your network. You can also use your alumni circles, or you can use your maybe fraternity or sorority circles. Social media is a circle itself, like LinkedIn. So my first, I think the number one recommendation within this get in to fit in is be intentional about the networking circles that you want to engage with. So that's number one. Number two, always remember it's about them. It's not about you when you're networking. We live in a day where it's almost like the I is becoming dominant. And it's frustrating sometimes when you're networking with individuals where it's really all about them. And so you have to remember, networking is thinking about the other individual's needs, their wants, what's the so what for them. That's how you really start that relationship, when they feel valued, they feel connected. And that's when you then can think about you. So in that second point is it's all about the individual who you're trying to network with. So for example, this individual who I met at this social last weekend, he's an officer in the Coast Guard. He enjoys wine. He's happily married. He seems physically fit. They have a new found puppy that they love. He's from his heart's in California. And he's looking to transition into the GS world after he retires from the Coast Guard. I learned a lot about this individual. He doesn't know much about me, though. And that was the intention. When you're building that relationship, it's really all about him. So obviously, though, I was thinking about folks in other job seekers. So I did pick his brain, and it comes to his knowledge. So another way to develop that relationship is, I call it tickle the belly a little bit, is kind of talk about what they really enjoy doing. I talk about an article that they wrote or a blog they posted. Really kind of hone in on their either a special skill set or a unique knowledge point. But again, that second point is make sure it's all about them. So the first is, those introverts, you got to get in to fit in. And one strategy is be methodical of how you develop your networking circles. You can create a taxonomy, if you will, to organize these circles. Number two, it's all about them. It's not about you. And honestly, you got to make sure you remind yourself when you're talking to people, you got to make it about them. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them accordingly. And the third point, and by the way, I'm kind of shooting this from the hip, so hopefully it's coming out a little bit.
It's great.
The third point that I would recommend is to be observant. Be observant. Now, it's easy if you're in the office, or in a social environment, whatever. Be observant, basically, of something that they're either wearing, or what they're saying, or or how they're saying it, so that you can use it, you can weave it in. Now, in the office, it's so easy because when you're sitting in someone's office, you can look. And this is what I do when I do interviews. When I'm networking, when I'm doing my thing, I will scan the office for like 5 or 10 seconds and find the dominant artifacts. And that means it could be family photos, sports, basketball, photos, whatever. It's easy to pick up on something and then talk about it. And I'll give you an example, and I did this virtually. I had my last promotion was at GSA, and I had an interview panel. And fortunately, I knew the names, so I Googled them and I looked on the LinkedIn, and I tried to find one thing that I had in common with each of those individuals. One individual was from Italy, so obviously when we're shaking hands and all that, I brought up something, talk about Italy. So for that that third point, when it comes to networking, you got to be observant. You got to observe either observe something about them or what they're wearing or where they're sitting, their environment, so that you can pull something to use it in your conversation. Now, I'll give you one other example, and it was kind of a hard conversation in that social last week. I ended up talking with this other individual. And most of the people had their own little circles in this event last weekend. There was one individual who was standing kind of by themselves most of the time. So I went in, and of course, as I started trying to have a conversation with this gentleman, it was kind of hard. And then third or fourth question, I said, "Hey, Tom, where do you work? What do you do?" And he said, "Well, I used to work for," he says, "I'm a driver for UPS." And I jumped on it. Bam! Well, I used to hire for UPS in Middleburg, Ohio. And I told him, I said, what, before I became before I sat in my position, as that manager, I had to sit 2 weeks as a preloader. I actually didn't sit. I had to actually serve as a preloader and reloader, and how it just busted my butt loading those trucks. So we ended up talking because I found that common element. Because most of these people at the social were white collars. He was the only blue collar, and me, I'm a hybrid. I'm a kind of a professional misfit. I started my life as a blue collar, and I transitioned into white collar. So, even if the conversation is difficult when it comes with somebody, and you're kind of like really trying to, you find yourself kind of, it's kind of an effort to start this conversation. Again, remember those 3 elements, these 3 main points that I talked about. Number one, make sure that, when to get in to fit in, make sure that as you're talking to somebody, think about what type of circle they fall into, and use your tacit knowledge to add to that conversation that is associated to that respective circle. 2, it's all about them, not about you. And 3, again, be observant. And so for me, I was asking questions, and once this individual basically spoke a term that I was able to connect to, I jumped on it. So networking is difficult. I get it for some people. Me, actually, it's easy for me, actually. But for other people, it's actually, I know it's kind of a trained art. But for those introverts, and I'm talking to you specifically, if you're not a networker, you got to buck up, take some of these principles I just talked about, and get out there and build your contacts. Okay.
That is phenomenal, Alex. It's Owen here says, I'm a big introvert. It's one of my self-improvement areas that I'm working on. And he also had a follow-up question, wants to know, what does someone who's new have to offer to someone who's well established?
So the base of the question is, what does someone who's new have to offer to someone who's well established?
Yeah.
That's actually a very good question. Let me just actually answer this in 2 parts. If this is the same individual who said, this is one of my self-improvement areas, my advice, and I've done it myself, is that you go to a social event or you go to a paid event by yourself, and you mingle and you talk. A play or a concert, something. Get in there by yourself. Don't go with anybody who you're friends with. Just go somewhere in a strange environment, get in there and learn how to speak to people by basically training on strangers. Because most likely you may not see them again. So if you feel like you kind of messed up, that's okay. It's just training ground. So one good self-development technique is to go somewhere by yourself when within a gathering, and have fun. And one good recommendation is, my wife and I actually did it recently, is there's a lot of vineyards out there, a lot of apple picking out there, out in when it comes to the west part of either Virginia or other areas. Find some outside activities and go out there by yourself and see if you can actually start a conversation with a stranger. That's a good way to build up those skills. The second part, what does someone who's new have to offer to someone who's well established? Well, you know what? It depends on the context. Obviously, we all have unique interests. We all are unique individuals. So there's, when it comes to starting a conversation in a kind of like a general context, the best way to offer something is by listening. I think the best way to really gain favor and gain respect is just be a good listener and asking probing questions. Try not to be that, over aggressive. We've had some of those encounters in our life, but be, be of interest, be genuine with them, and really have, really help them, or, really listen to them and what their passions are. Because every individual, they have a passion, they have something they love talking about. So just expand, I want you, and the term has come to my mind, is exploit, but it's not the right term. I just want you to be able to, when you're conversing with somebody and they start talking about something they really do enjoy talking about it, I want you to really just expand on it, to ask probing questions. Use some, I would say, when it comes to listening, use some reflective listening, such as, man, you must really enjoy what you do. Those type of statements, and really get them talking. So when it comes to people who are new in any industry, the best way to build rapport is, again, it goes back to listening. And I've learned by mistakes. I walked in some environments where I start flapping my lip, thinking I knew something. I didn't know anything. And of course, the individuals knew around me. They knew I didn't know anything. Now, when I'm in certain groups, I will actually just listen more and more and more. I'll actually, even when my work, I tend to listen more to either the stakeholders or who I'm talking with, just to just to be able to actually build that better relationship. Hopefully that will help you when it comes to your career, when it comes to trying to go to that next level. Just always know listening is a good tool, a good technique to use in any type of level that you're at.
Thank you so much, Alex. And I would also add to that to just be curious. I think when you're curious about people, then it doesn't come off as, a ton of aggressive probing questions. If they're telling you, about, I don't know, a hobby or their work or whatever, just be interested, be curious about what's going on, which is, a huge skill in security. And I think just a huge skill overall that leaders look for in talent. They always talk about passion, curiosity. So I would say to also use that in the networking sense as well.
Most definitely.
Okay, perfect. BB is here. Hey, BB.
Hey, BB.
Okay, so let's jump in and talk about this young man that you met who is a cybersecurity leader who's been hiring talent, who is giving us the scoop on what's cool, what he loves, what he doesn't like, and what we can do to help get folks into the industry.
Thank you. And I think you've actually really just said one good point about being curious. So this conversation with this individual, and we were talking about candidates, because I mentioned that, I do hiring myself, I build teams, and we talked about candidates, especially those candidates at interviews. We shared our stories as hiring managers. And so, the one thing, and I definitely agree with this individual, he said, Alex, the one thing that I find, on their resume, they just shine. Obviously, your resume is a marketing tool, and it's supposed to actually highlight your accomplishments. It's supposed to help you, you toot your horn, make you shine. It's a marketing tool. You don't want a marketing tool that's gonna, kick you under the bus. No. So your resume is gonna help you shine, most definitely. Always remember that. Your resume is a marketing tool. Always know that. With that in mind, as a hiring manager, as this individual conveyed, he looks at this resume, he sees a stellar candidate. But when they start interviewing this candidate and start asking behavior-based questions, their responses are, basically, the resume is Apple, but this candidate is basically speaking in prunes, dried up prunes. And of course, we, our collective theory is that sometimes when a job seeker, when they're building their resume, sometimes they actually either pay somebody to write it, or they maybe copy something. They go to other resources, maybe lift and shift, as I call it, basic crosswalking similar language into their resume without thinking about, can they support the points they're making in that resume? And so just remember this: your resume is truly an extension of who you are in a marketing way. You got your summary of qualifications that basically says, I'm all that, okay? And then you got your experience that gives evidence to all that. And then kind of the third part is kind of your professional interests or things like that, any professional articles, anything published by you, and whatnot, okay? So it's kind of in three major parts about who you, that really kind of reflects who you are professionally. The frustration that this individual and I shared is that when you write your resume and what's in your resume, you need to be able to back up every bullet point. And how you do that? Well, star stories. And I know this has been around for a while in the career development arena, so it's not probably a foreign term to you. Star stories. You have to have star stories for every point you have in your resume. And the best way to have your star stories is to write them down and keep a collection of your star stories. I do the same thing. Matter of fact, I started kind of putting in my star stories for this almost near ending fiscal year. I took my performance plan and my performance objectives, and I translated them into star stories. So every year I update my list of star stories in my own personal swipe file. And so keep in mind, the main point is make sure you can back up what's in your resume. Either your resume is truly a reflection of your professional and your personal accomplishments, or I'll say it like it is, it's lipstick on a pig. It reflects nothing of you. And so how a hiring manager knows that is when you start speaking at interviews, or when you start kind of have to respond to maybe essay related questions in the application. So make sure that your resume itself is a reflection of who you are, and that you can back it up. And the best way to back up those nuggets in that resume, those accomplishments in that resume, is using star stories. Okay. Secondly, we kind of go ahead.
Alex, before you move on, did you confirm what STAR stands for? STAR?
Oh, I'm sorry. So again, thank you, Renee. So again, my assumption is, and for most people in the work world, or those who are going into the work world, because you've been through either college and you went to career services, or a guidance counselor in a high school, they talk about these things, but I probably should. I got to make sure that everyone understands. Mm-hmm. A STAR stands for this. It's almost like very similar to another acronym that helps you highlight your accomplishments. So let me just say this in short: STAR stories are your significant accomplishments, and STAR stands for situation, tactics, or task, action, results. Situation, task, action, results. It's just a structured format of how you write your significant accomplishment. It helps you. It helps you. Prevents you from kind of writing a typical job duty, such as I attend meetings.
Right.
Instead, it helps you really hone in on your significant accomplishments by using this structured format. So STAR stands for situation. The situation is this. It could be a strategic or organizational requirement. Could be a challenge or an issue you're facing in your current job, or facing as a team, something that was going against you guys, such as low budget or high demand. Task is something either directed by a supervisor or by the manager, or something that you take on your own. Is kind of an objective that you're trying to accomplish. And of course, actions are all the steps that you took to accomplish that significant accomplishment. And of course, R, of course, is results. Either you can quantify it by numbers, by percentages, or qualify it by or by an award that you received, or by a quote. But STAR, that is what STAR stands for. And it's, in short, it's just a structured format to help you highlight your significant accomplishments. Take it back to the resume. That plugs into your resume, that backs up your resume in those bullet points you have in there. So when you do send it out, when you do sit before either a hiring manager or a panel, you'll be able to back up those bullets with some amazing examples of your significant accomplishments. But thank you, Renee.
No, that's an excellent point. There's some comments here, but before I get to the comments, I just wanted to say that it is fascinating to me, and I like, to your point, I get why people's marketing document is, top notch, but then when you ask them to speak to it, it's to your point, lipstick on a pig. It's like, did they really do this? And sometimes people have done it. Hopefully they've done it, but just haven't practiced how to articulate it in an interview format, or they get so nervous or whatever it is that they just, completely clam up. And I think part of it is a lack of practice too. Sometimes I tell people, I used to, especially new grads and folks that are rusty, that haven't interviewed in a while, just go on interviews, even if you don't want the job. Actually, it's better if you don't want it, because then you can work out, shake off the kinks. You start to understand what people are looking for, how you respond to the questions, and you just get better and better at interviewing. And that's just a huge skill.
It's a very good point you just made, because I get a lot of feds. They struggle with that. They like, well, I have this pending job offer, or this maybe pending. Who knows? They're waiting. They haven't heard, either or, and they have a invite to go to interview, and they're sometimes kind of, maybe I shouldn't do this. And I tell them, go on interviews. There's nothing wrong with going on interviews. Like nothing wrong going on a date. You don't have to marry them, but go on interviews. Even if the job is not of your interest, go into the interview, but with the mindset, I'm just going to practice and do my best so I can get better and better and better. I'll be honest with you guys. What I've been able to do tonight, it took years, but when I speak to people, I know this. I need to leave you guys nuggets. So I break it apart into small little points. And so even though I'm shooting from the hips, I start thinking about what main points, what main nuggets would be for you. When I was in my 20s, I never thought that way. So it takes time and practice. So go on interviews, every one of them. Don't be selective. Go on every one of them. Get better at what you do.
I agree. Practice. I think BB put that in here. Sometimes people cannot articulate what is on the resume. Practice. So true, BB. A couple other points that were back here. Clinton Walker is here. Hey, Clinton. He says, hello, Renee. Hello, Alex. Clinton is always here. He says, STAR is great. I love using it. Great tool and approach. It's Owen says, that's great advice. He's adding it to the to-do list. And I think that's when you talked about keeping a running roster of the stories, like as they're happening, because I can tell you, it's so funny. I'm in the middle of putting together, a document right now, and I have to think back and wonder, what did I do again? And someone was telling me about some of the community service work that I've been doing. And she was just like, oh yeah, you did this. I was like, oh yeah, I did. Like I completely forgot about it.
Can I just inject one thing? Because you just said something that's triggered something in my mind. And in this, let's actually hone in on STAR. I don't want to forget maybe two other points with this individual who leads a cybersecurity team in the Coast Guard, but I want to inject one thing. Obviously, we talked about the importance of networking. And by the way, folks, and Renee, if you can put it into the comments, they can go to federalcareerconnection.org, the blog, type in networking, and you'll bring up a couple blogs about networking. I also have a blog that has information about the STAR. And so you can always go to our blog to read more about what we're saying tonight. So we talked about the importance of networking, and we talked about the importance of highlighting your significant accomplishments. And one very good way, good practice is using the STAR format. But Renee, you mentioned something else that I can put into the STAR format conversation in this little point of ours. The worst thing to do when you're creating a resume is trying to think about, what did I do 1, 2, or 3 years ago? And it's unfortunate because I find a lot of employees, a lot of coworkers, let's just say employees, they're very hard workers when it comes to the organization's requirements, but they're very lazy when it comes to their career management. Let me say this again. They're hard workers when it comes to other people's requirements, the organization's requirements. When a task is given to you, you're a hard worker. I get it. But you're very lazy when it comes to career management. I'm not sure why that happens. You're giving most of your energy to to an entity outside yourself, but you're not managing your own career. Let me tell you how I do mine. I kind of use a bifurcated approach. When I start creating a star story, remember I mentioned, and Renee, I can't see your comment, so if you can write in situation, task, action, result. Beginning of every year, for me, it's beginning of every fiscal year, I put together my performance plan. And in my performance plan, every time I think of a new project or new kind of initiative I want to focus on, either a long-term initiative or a short-term initiative, I actually start writing my star story right then and there. And how I do it is that when I propose my objectives to the big boss, I provide them, number one, the situation, an executive requirement, a strategic goal, or an issue dealing with the team. I actually I give them the situation, and I give them my objective, the task. So I basically, at my level, I'm going to say at my level, at my age, I know now. I don't wait to be told to do something. I give the big boss, here's the objective you should be giving me. Here's your pain area. Here's my proposed objective. So at the beginning of the year, I already have written this the narrative for the situation and the narrative for the task. So I've already actually accomplished 2 of the 4 letters in the beginning of the year. The action is the project plan. It's a plan, MBO, management by objectives, Gantt chart, whatever you use. You build the actions by the plan you build for that initiative. Could be as simple as these are the steps we're going to take in an email. And the results, well, you have to wait for them. You got to see what either you accomplish an output, and you guys should know what that is. I'm not going to explain that. Output, you should know. If you don't know what output is, go to Google, type in project management or program management, type in output and learn what an output is, or an outcome. So I start my star story at the beginning of every year. Could be calendar year, could be fiscal year. My team knows it with Federal Career Connection, and the government knows it when it comes to my performance plan. So at the end of the year, the only thing I'm doing into my star stories, I'm taking what I've done and I lift and I shift it into my star story list. No work at all, because I've done all the front labor in the beginning of the year. If you're not doing that, and I say this with love because I want you to find gainful employment and enjoy what you do, because when you enjoy what you do, you're going to help others around you. If you're not doing that, you're lazy. You're lazy in your career management. And I say that with love. You got to make sure you manage your career. You're like you're the CEO of your own organization, which is you. And that's how you capture your amazing star stories, is by the beginning of the year.
Alex, I have a question for you.
Yes,
because I wonder if people are actually lazy, because what I think about, I would not have known, I learned this a little bit later on in my career too. And I think about how beneficial it would have been if I knew about it earlier in my career. And so I wonder if people just don't know to do things like this versus the actual I'm not going to do it. Like, I think if more people knew this earlier on, you would have more people doing it.
You know what? That's another good side of it too. And I know I'm a little bit tough on here, and I'm not going to be honest with you. The folks
it's good. It's good to be tough.
I'm not going to apologize, guys. I want you to be the best of what you can be. And by the way, I'm a Marine vet, and this comes out too. But let me just say this. If somebody says, well, I just didn't, they either blame it on their guidance counselor, or they blame it on career services, or whoever they blamed it on, at the end of the day, when you're facing your vocational pathway in life, you got to make the choice. Do you want to depend on others, or do you want to actually pull up the bootstraps and walk it yourself? it was easy for me because I didn't really have a home. And so at one point in my life, I slept in a car and had been pretty much kind of on my own in a lot of ways. So I didn't have that luxury to go back home and stay in the basement until I'm like 38. I didn't have it. So I ended up joining the Marine Corps. And so for me, my advice is this. If you, and I'm going to say, let me just put the context of laziness. It's not being lazy in a bad way. Is that you're giving your energy, you're giving a lot of energy to other organizations, other groups. You're giving all that time to them, and you're taking that precious time away from you when it comes to career management. And when you do sit down and you're like, okay, it's about me, you're just too tired. And I get that.
Well, that's the thing.
So I was going to let's change the syntax and the term laziness. However, somebody may say, well, I just didn't know. Well, let me just challenge you. Let me, BB out there, and was it Winston out there? Do me a favor. Just do this. Let's have fun. Go to Google or go to a search engine. I tend to use Google and type in using a basic, just the basic phrase, how do I manage my career? And most likely, if you type that in, you're gonna come across some articles, some blogs, some information that gives you some major points that Renee and we tend to reiterate a lot of times in these sessions. Mm-hmm. So when somebody says, I just didn't know, I wonder, I have to question that, given that we're in the information age where information is at the end of your fingers, and you can actually find information to kind of learn the basic principles and techniques of how to manage your career. I'll just say one last thing on career management, such as keeping account of your star stories. In the 1940s, as they were building, setting up really counseling offices within high schools in the U.S. There was an individual who basically stated one time, I don't remember this person's name, but they stated, when it comes to your career, finding your vocation is just as important as finding a spouse. And that's how important your career is that because it really is part of you, because your career is an extension of the gift inside you, that God-given gift that's given to you, that you need to act out on to find that mission in your life, that purpose in your life. It could be in cybersecurity, could be in the nonprofit, could be in the public arena, could be volunteering. But to find it takes work. There's not too many of us like Tiger Woods, who pretty much knew he was a good golfer at age 3. Not many of us like that out there. The majority of us, we have to scrape and find our natural bent of ours. And it's not easy work. It's actually hard work. So in this career environment, there's one side, I'll use the term laziness, and the syntax for laziness is that you give all the energy to other people, and you don't have enough for you. The way to kind of combat that, address it, is start your star stories of the beginning of the calendar or fiscal year. The other side, I just don't know. The information's out there. I just cannot think that right now somebody doesn't know how to write a resume when there's so many resources on the internet that you can find. Okay?
Okay, so BB says, a couple comments here.
I see she's posting something. What is that?
She posts all this good stuff. But I'm going to go back in some of the comments.
I love BB.
I love BB too. So Dave Michi is here. Glad to be able to join. Hello, Renee. Hello, Alex. Taking notes. Awesome. We worked with David last week on some resume help, and things change. That's another point. There's some things in resumes that definitely stay relatively consistent, or have stayed consistent for what I've seen for the past 20 years. But then there are some things that change, and we had a really good conversation around tenure you know, how tenure has gotten shorter and shorter over the years, and, you know, the various populations, and, you know, how long on average folks are staying in opportunities, and what may look like jumpy, you know, 10 years ago or 5 years ago is pretty standard now. So we had, you know, a pretty lively conversation around just the evolution of resumes and what was considered job hopping.
What decade, let me ask you, what was, I'll use the term decade, I won't say year, what decade did resumes start?
Gosh, that's a good question. I'm thinking, did it start in the 50s?
On or about 1933.
Oh, wow. Before.
It started in New York. New York is the hub of business. That's where the resumes started kind of developing organically, is in New York in the 1930s. But you're right to say, resumes, in some ways, the standards have not changed, such as chronological, combination, hybrid, CV, things like that. It has changed in some other areas. Instead of using job titles, a lot of times, we're now using as a branding tool, starting off with your core competencies instead of job title. Yes, things have definitely changed, but in a lot of ways, it has stayed static in some elements, because, you know, it's just, we're so used to looking at a certain way. Resume.
Yeah. We talked about chronological versus functional, and I told them, you just got to go chronological, because functional, it's always a question. There's so few of them around in business. Now, I don't know what it is for like medical profession, other professions, but in business, from what I've seen, it's whenever it's functional, people's eyes go, it just doesn't line up. So, okay, more comments here. I think I said this one already. Clinton says, "Star, it's great. I love using it." David, I love back up those nuggets in your resume. I actually learned the STAR process in college. So I think people who've learned in college, they, you know, if they potentially didn't go to college, they may not necessarily fully know what this is, but we're getting a lesson today.
Yeah, let's hold on David. David, I like what you just said. So David, and thanks, you're giving us good principles, mechanics, that's fine and dandy. But David, let me ask you, do you keep a running tally of all your STAR stories?
Backing it up. That's so important. It is so important, because trust me, like I said, I'm dealing with it right now. I'm like, what did I do, you know, those years ago? And people are informing me things that I completely forgot about, and they're significant.
They are.
You're absolutely right.
So let's hopefully, because I'm looking at the time right now.
Yikes. We almost we got 10 minutes to go.
I just want to recap it real quick, guys, especially for folks like Dave and Winston and BB and other folks. So we talked about the importance of, again, if you're not comfortable with networking, you need to really, to get in, to fit in, you need to actually be proactive. And I talked about some techniques such as using networking circles to kind of define your groups. I also talked about being number two. I mentioned about being it's all about the other individual. And 3, be observant. So getting in, all about the other individual, and being observant. The other side, when it comes to STAR stories, so a STAR story or a C card, the context, challenge, action, results, or let's make it very easy. Basically an issue, action, results, a challenge, action, results. Kind of really is a major, kind of 3 major parts. Is what's the problem? What was your action? What was the results? Whatever you use, you have to actually write down your accomplishments in that year that you performed in them. I've done it all the way back to 1998. I keep a running tally of all the things I've done, because you're right. You know, over the years, you may forget of all those amazing things that you've done. So that's one area, being very proactive, purposeful in your career management. And then, of course, you know, let me just end this one part, because I do want to talk about one other point with the cybersecurity manager that I met, who's from the Coast Guard. When it comes to how do I manage my career? Well, guys, I'll be honest with you. I didn't know up till 2003. I really didn't know. I went off the winds of other people told me what to do, or I just kind of blindly picked. And I finally, enough was enough in 2003 when I was working in South Korea. And I was working for the Department of the Army. I was a civilian public affairs officer. And so I decided to purchase resources like what color is your parachute, some paid vocational tests like the Strong's Inventory. I did some journaling. I've interviewed other people about me who knew me. And I was very intentional of trying to find out who I was. Now, I'll just say this. I know for me right now, when it comes to my life vision and my purpose, the one advantage I have over you guys, it's not the job I'm in, it's not, the titles, whatever. I have stage 4 cancer. And it's a blessing in one way because having this permanent disease inside me makes me very purposeful in life because, my PET scan's coming up. I do a PET scan every 3 months. And so for me, I know when it does take me down, sooner or later, when it does take me, if I died in 6 months from now, and it's very easily I could, I would actually smile in bed. I would know that at least I did something for the big guy when it comes to helping people find their natural bent. I filled that mission for him, and I'm going to smile when I pass on that. I wonder if you guys can say the same thing right now today. And if you can't, then you need to own your own career. You need to manage it as you manage your relationships or your budget or how you take care of your car or your home. You got to manage your career. You can't passively ride the wave and take detours or make decisions based off other people's recommendation. You got to know what makes you tick. And one last thing with this individual that I met from the Coast Guard for cybersecurity. We talked about the resume, backing it up. But the one thing he talked about that Renee actually talked about in the beginning was, basically having, being curious. And the one thing I loved what this guy said is that, Alex, I wish I could find somebody who always wants to learn. Always wants to learn, because most of you people, software and coding is in that perpetual beta stage. It's always evolving, and so there's always something to learn, like almost every month in your career, in your field. So a character trait that you could definitely highlight and also highlight on your resume is constantly being certified, taking on new certifications, increasing your current certifications, finding ways to always learn more, writing a blog, building your own coding, doing something, always showing, be able to effectively show that you are continuing, basically an individual who does continuing learning and always striving to be better. He said that was really in the top 3 of his things that he looks at into a candidate. Number 1, he talked about, as I conveyed, back up that resume with star stories. Number 2, always learn, always improve, always develop, always know that you don't know enough. And 3, he said, make sure you have other passions in your life. He has a collection, his wife and him has a collection of just a variety of wines. They have a wine cellar in California. He loves wines, just not drinking. He loves learning about it.
Can I meet him?
Yes. So have a passion on the outside of your work, because it can't always be about work. Because as I mentioned before, if you get back into your own space and you're tired from giving to others all the time, and you can't manage your career, the term I use now, and I'll qualify it, that laziness, is because you're just too tired to manage your career because you gave more than enough energy and resources to other individuals or other organizations. So always remember those three things. I just want to end with before we end tonight. And hopefully what I've said tonight will be of value to you guys, because I really mean it. I mean, the one thing I look at in the climate that we're in right now, the one thing we all have in common is, what value do we have to offer to the world, at least to those around us, and to be able to accomplish your mission before that last breath you have in life. And again, as in my situation, can you smile on your deathbed knowing that you were doing what you meant to do, or were you doing it just either for the money or because someone told you to do it and you really don't enjoy it? So I hope that resonated with at least one individual.
It absolutely did. It totally resonated with me. I think that was just so powerful and such a powerful testimony. Just in general. I mean, prior to you, when you talked about learning about yourself, What Color Is My Parachute? It's one of my favorite books. And we just wrote a book, Chris Foulon and Gary Hayslip and I, on talking about this topic, breaking into security. And the very first thing that I said in the beginning chapters, what do I do first? And I said, do the assessment. So you talked about the strong, which is taking me back a few years, because that one is one that's definitely an academic one, because you don't hear about that much.
Yeah.
But the strong assessment, the What Color Is My Parachute book, really just understanding who you are. And so that you don't have to try to being the best you, and being, as to your point, being intentional about that, and not trying to fit into the mold of, whatever opportunity is coming, like, oh, cybersecurity is hot, or it's, a lot. So they say, well, for some folks, you can make a lot of money and all these other things, versus, or trying to be a pen tester because that seems like the thing to do, when none of what your skills are or your passions are or and nothing aligns to that particular skill set. So really truly doing that introspection is so key. And, telling your own story about where you are right now, like you'll smile when you meet your maker to say, this is what I've done, like I fulfilled what I came on this earth to do. And I think that's just so powerful.
And I think, and again, it's been with the help of you and others, turning Federal Career Connection into a nonprofit. It's been really fun to be able to give people tools to help them, land gainful employment, and hopefully at least ignite the curiosity to find their own calling in life and find their own mission in life. And that equates to that natural bent that need to be fulfilled. Yeah,
absolutely. So BB says, thanks very much, Alex and Renee. Awesome podcast to encourage participants to own their career. So very true. And David Michi says, yes, love the Breaking Into Cybersecurity book so far. I must check out What Color Is My Parachute. It's one of my favorite books.
Yes, and David, make sure that when you purchase the edition I would recommend is not the latest edition. It's the 2020. That was the year that Dick Bowles, the original, the author, he passed away then. The best one is 2020. He always updated his book every year. He considered like a journal. So I would actually focus on the 2020 edition, David.
I didn't know he passed. For some reason, I thought he passed before then. Interesting. Okay, wonderful. So, Alex, we're at the top of the hour right now.
Yeah, we are.
I'm reminding you.
Oh, hold on.
Unplug from social
Hold
media.
on. I'm sorry about that. Alexa, stop. I have a reminder to unplug off social media every
at 8 o'clock. There it is.
Just reminded me to unplug. Oh my goodness.
Unplug. Get out of here. So it was amazing having you as usual. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story, for giving such amazing advice every single time you come on, and, talking about being a continuous learner. I mean, you are the epitome of that. And every time I listen to someone from Federal Career Connection, I learned something new. It's continuous learning. So it's amazing to have you on. Thank you again. Thank you for a wonderful organization, Federal Career Connections, and all the amazing people that are a part of the organization. And I look forward to connecting with someone from FCC again next month. Same time, last Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, folks.
Take care, everybody.